Does Astonishing X-Men still astonish over 20 years later? Grab a cup of coffee and let's check out this book. All right, here we have the Astonishing X-Men Omnibus by Joss Whedon and John Cassaday. This ran for 24 issues and then ended on a giant size. As you can see, the cover work is fantastic, and once we get into the book, you'll see it in a larger size. But let's get this dust jacket off and have a look. So you can see a pretty cool wraparound cover on the inside of the dust jacket. And let's get into it. So Astonishing X-Men comes out in May of 2004. And not in title, but in spirit, this is the follow-up to Grant Morrison's New X-Men, which I reviewed recently on the channel. You can find it if you scroll down a ways. I thought Grant Morrison did a fantastic job with the X-Men. And then, again, the New X-Men title went on and was renamed back to X-Men, and Astonishing X-Men became the book. So start off with a little backstory history on the X-Men, X-Men 101. I don't know if Joss Whedon wrote this, but gives you a little bit of a catch-up. One thing I will say is the covers from John Cassaday are fantastic. And I remember when these were coming out in the comic shop and seeing this on the shelf, mind blown. The simplicity of it, the darkness of it, the brightness of it, the sharpness of it. Like, that is an all-time awesome cover. So in this omnibus, we really have 4 stories. In the first one, we get to see a longtime X-Men return to the team. Shadowcat, Kitty Pryde comes back to the team, and you get this really cool throwback from the Claremont era of when she was not super happy with Professor Xavier. I will say Kitty is a standout in this book, probably one of the best parts of this entire run. So it's largely the same team that we saw in the Morrison book, although considerably stripped down. We're going to see a lot more of the growing, budding relationship between Scott and Emma. And in the first story, which is called, or the first run, I guess you'd say, is called Breakworld. And we're introduced to this new bad guy here named Ord. And Ord is from a planet called the Breakworld. And actually the first run is called Gifted. But this is really cool, right? We get to see a brand new villain to X-Men lore. Not rehashing old villains. We get a new villain coming down to take on the X-Men. And you'll slowly find out kind of why. A subplot to this whole thing, and kind of related to this O-R-D character, is the mutant cure. This company has come up with a cure for the mutant disease, as they call it. And obviously, the mutant community is going to be split. We get a really cool interaction with S.H.I.E.L.D. The S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up a few times throughout this book. And then they will also interplay, the X-Men will, with S.W.O.R.D. We'll get to learn a little bit more about Ord and his relationship to the mutant cure and what he's doing. In this book, there is a return of a character long thought dead, and I'll try not to give it away, although it's 20 years old, people. What are we going to do here? So we get the return of Colossus, who had been thought dead for at least a few years from a publishing standpoint, as he sacrificed himself to help cure the legacy virus. Here we get the X-Men working not with, not necessarily against S.H.I.E.L.D. And S.W.O.R.D. as they're trying to deal with this alien invader. The artwork in this story is very cool. I think John Cassaday did a really good job. I don't always love his work, but in Astonishing X-Men, he did a fantastic job. Here's another example of a cover that's just absolutely beautiful. So the second story in this run is called Dangerous. And I feel like there was a bit of a drop-off on this. If I'm being fair, the first 5 or 6 issues, Gifted, was very cool. This starts off on a high note. Dangerous, which is the next 5 or 6 issues, we see the Danger Room, which had long ago been rebuilt with Shi'ar technology, become sentient, or become, this robot lady here. And she, or it, has been fighting the X-Men for many years and knows all their moves. And so she proves to be a pretty good foe. We see the X-Men return to Genosha, which, again, as a follow-up to Grant Morrison's X-Men, it's still on our minds and in our hearts. The 16 million lives lost on Genosha. Professor X is kind of hanging out there, a little away from the X-Men, but they do return to face Danger, I think is her name. We get a return of Sebastian Shaw and Cassandra Nova, who's a little bit nerfed. She's not the same Cassandra Nova that she was in the Grant Morrison run. In this next arc, which was called Torn. Another arc that I thought was just okay. One character that I can't recall if she was created by Grant Morrison or if she was created here in this book, but Armor. And with Kitty Pryde being a standout in this book, Armor is the other standout in this book. If I have 2 good things to say about it, it's Kitty Pryde and Armor are awesome. Sebastian Shaw is coming back. He is trying to manipulate Emma, who is in turn, kind of screwing with the X-Men, whether it's by her will or not. It's cool. We get to explore a little bit more of Emma, right? She's kind of recently joined the team as a major player. But again, I didn't absolutely love this run. This one is really cool. And when I recap this book, I'm probably going to tell you that I don't love it as much as I used to. I don't always think that Joss Whedon got the voice of the character down, but he does small moments really well. And as a team, him and John Cassaday do throwbacks really well. So early on, you get to see a fastball special. We haven't seen one in many years. This one here, which is a shout out to Wolverine in the sewers, kind of in that lead up to Mutant Massacre. So he does small moments, really cool. But again, not totally in love with this arc. I just didn't think he understood who these characters were. They felt really different. The dialogue to me at times felt really forced. And like I said, I just don't think he knew the characters. So the character that we met in the first 6 issues, Ord from the Breakworld, kind of plays a role throughout this entire story. And because he's playing a role in it, Sword, who's in charge of, is kind of like the shield of outer space for Earth. Maybe I'll put up here what Sword means because I never remember it. But we get Mrs. Brandt here, and she is not a fan of the X-Men generally, but definitely trying to protect Earth from this planet called the Breakworld. Here's Scott, who goes 3 or 4 issues without needing his glasses because he loses his powers. We also, later on in the story, get the return of Danger that we met in that second arc. And again, the art in this book is really cool. And one thing I'll say is that it's a very clean, kind of stripped down team. The art and the writing is very clean. There's not a lot of fat, I'll say. Like this is a great jumping on point for new readers. You don't have to know a lot about the X-Men or where they've been to understand this book. So now we're in I think it's the last arc, which is called Unstoppable. And that's where the X-Men actually travel to this Breakworld place to confront this alien race and learn why they are after the X-Men and why they want to destroy Earth. More fantastic art. And like I said, the art's just very clean, really, really approachable. John Cassaday does a fantastic job in this run. And then we finish this story on issue 24. And then this title had a lot of delays. Some people will say it's because John Cassaday's art took such a long time. Some people will say it's because Joss Whedon, was not solely a comic book writer and had other things to do. In fact, I believe this story was supposed to be a crossover with House of M. And, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You can almost read this book without knowing anything else about the events of the Marvel universe at the time. It doesn't talk about hardly anything that's going on. And in fact, I don't think it mentions House of M in this book at all. But not sure if they had planned on going on longer, but the delays kind of got on everyone's nerves, and they ended up finishing this one on a giant size to wrap up the entire story. We see a lot of other characters from the Marvel Universe step in, which is always really cool. From an extras standpoint, there is an introduction to Astonishing X-Men by my favorite author, Brian K. Vaughan, which I thought was really cool. This is the other cover that you can get on this omnibus. There's a bunch of variant sketch work by John Cassaday, Gabriel Del Otto. This one's really cool. But there is, and maybe I already passed it. I don't think I did. The only thing we get from Joss Whedon is some emails between him and Joe Quesada and Mike Martz, who I imagine is the editor of X-Men at the time, just kind of talking about what he is thinking about bringing to the X-Men. And because they're always talked about next to each other, this book and its predecessor, New X-Men, I'll mention that this same extra was in the New X-Men Omnibus. The emails between Grant Morrison and the editor's team and his notes and what he wanted to do. And they were awesome. And he did a lot of what he said he wanted to do. Joss Whedon in his 6 or 7 emails that are covered here is mostly joking around and doesn't appear to be taking this opportunity really seriously. And to me, I think you can see that in the overall quality of the book. And we get a little interview with John Cassaday. But that is Astonishing X-Men. So my thoughts on this book have definitely changed over the years. I used to really be in love with this book and the stories contained in there. But as I've read it now for probably the 3rd or 4th time, and having just read it directly after Morrison's run, again, my thoughts have changed. I think it's an okay book. It's pretty fun. The art's fantastic. I would say on its own, it's a pretty good X-Men story. But in the vast sea that is X-Men content and X-Men Omnibus, I think it's a pretty average story, especially as a follow-up to the wonderful work that Grant Morrison did. I kind of wonder if Marvel and the editors needed Joss Whedon more than Joss Whedon needed to come over and write a comic book, especially at that time. I also question if he really took it that seriously. Some of the extras in this book are fantastic alt covers by John Cassaday. And then really the only thing from Joss Whedon is 5 or 6 emails back and forth with Casada and the X-Men editors at the time. And if you read them, you can kind of get the feeling that Joss Whedon really didn't care about this. So, like I said, on its own, pretty cool X-Men story. There's a bunch of X-Men out there. I think this one's pretty average when you compare it against all of it. And as a successor to Grant Morrison, I think it fell a little bit flat. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. I'm really interested to see how this one is aged. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next review.
Hey, Omnibuds! Be sure to check out the Omnibuds Cafe merchandise store where you can buy mugs, t-shirts, stickers. We're using earnings to buy equipment for YouTube and to fund more giveaways. Who doesn't like giveaways? So click the link in the description and start shopping.